it was just a difficult decision.
Nick Robinson, BBC News, Delaware.
Former President Biden there speaking to the BBC in his first interview since leaving office. Well, let's talk about that and everything else that's been happening today. I'm joined now by Bryce Reeves, Republican Virginia State Senator and former Trump surrogate, and also by Congressman Greg Landsman, a Democratic congressman from Ohio. Thanks to you both for being here. Let's just talk about what we've been watching a little snippet of there, and people can watch the full thing on the BBC website. President Biden clearly very frustrated with how this administration is approaching talks with Russia and Ukraine, and the White House has dismissed his characterization of events today. But is President Trump coming around to a more traditional US position, particularly those remarks today from the Vice President, J.D. Vance, about how Russia's asking too much? What do you think, Bryce?
I think when they had expectations at first. Of course, they laid out the markers that it would be done very, very quickly. And I think what they found was it's a little more complicated than what they thought from just basis points. But I think you're seeing a lot more movement. They're getting, when Trump signed the deal with Ukraine, we're actually getting something back now. We have a vested interest in Ukraine. We gave them billions and billions of dollars, and we didn't see any return on that investment. You're seeing a mutual agreement now with what's going on, and I think it will heighten the stakes to which Russia has to make a decisive decision if they move forward on Ukraine, that U.S. has interest there now as well with regard to minerals and those sort of things. So I think that deal they tried to get done the first time they were in the White House, where they had that blow up, if you want to call it that, that's the deal they were going to sign. That's signed now. So I think you'll see some movement there. But, even today, the world's blowing up. We've got India and Pakistan, and we'll get to that, I'm sure. There's a lot of crisis going on in the world. So I think Trump, as the leader of the free world, is trying to negotiate as best he can with all these world powers and deal with these wars at the same time. And it's a lot to deal with.
He doesn't seem to be making headway, though, with President Putin, does he, Congressman?
Not yet. I think there's a couple issues. One, they're spread way too thin. They have the same person trying to negotiate all of these deals, and they're super complicated deals. And Witkoff, and the same guy who's doing the Russia-Ukraine deal is trying to resolve the situation with Iran in the Middle East with Israel and Hamas. I mean, they're spread too thin. And then you have the Secretary of State also now serving as the National Security Advisor. So they got to build out a bigger team. Two, the president has to do a better job of articulating the vision that he has and then stick to it, because clarity is really important. And, most presidents have a doctrine. I don't think anyone really understands what this president's doctrine is. And the worry then is that this is sort of a Chamberlain versus a Churchill moment, and is he being more Chamberlain than Churchill? Chamberlain famously appeasing Hitler in the late 30s, and then Hitler went into Poland. And that's the worry here, is that if you appease Putin, he's just going to go into Poland.
And that's the point I think President Biden was trying to make, wasn't it? I mean, is he helping matters by getting involved at this point, doing interviews like that, as much as we're very grateful to have it here on BBC?
I don't know. It's tough. He's right substantively. The president is not a great communicator. That's never been his strong suit, and we need good communicators right now.
What do you think? Was it helpful for President Biden to make these comments, which then the White House has been criticizing today?
I think when you look at past presidents, a lot of them tend to just back off and allow the president to do what they do, whether that be George Bush or Barack Obama didn't come out and start hammering back. But I think President Biden, he's a fighter. He's been a fighter his whole life. He sat in the Senate and he's done those things. And I think the role for him now is probably senior statesman, to try to see where, rather than attack the president and do that. I think if he really felt the calling, he should reach out to the president and say, hey, I'm happy to take my phone call. I'd like to help if I can do that. Jimmy Carter did a lot of that in his time when he was left office. And, sometimes ex-presidents make great ambassadors to different countries to help facilitate those things. So I think there's a role for President Biden. I don't think it's bashing the current administration. I think he should take a senior statesman position.
Well, speaking of ambassadors, a new ambassador was sworn into office today, the ambassador to China, David Perdue, who you will know, he was a senator, of course, up on Capitol Hill. What do you think his elevation to this role, what's that going to mean for America policy towards China?
Hopefully that we have a very aggressive, very strategic approach to this relationship. It's the relationship that, if for better or for worse, will likely define what happens globally, and certainly what happens with our economy, our national security for decades, the better part of this century. And so it's a serious leader for a serious role. And so, the sooner we can get a deal done with China, the better. I mean, I am hearing, as we all, I think most people are, the genuine worry about the global trade war that's happening, and the people can't really afford higher prices right now, and getting these deals done as soon as humanly possible is, I think, going to be key for this president.
What do you say to that, Bryce? Because there is bipartisan support generally for a hardline policy on China, but these tariffs are going to be crippling.
Well, I spoke to a senior official in the White House at about 5:45 this afternoon, so I think there'll be an announcement tomorrow. I don't want to jump the ship. I don't want to put it out. I'm not doing it.
You can't drop that little tease there and walk away.
It'll be answered tomorrow, but I think you're going to see
relating to China.
I think you're going to see. I absolutely think there's going to be some things happen with China that have been negotiated that I think that it's up to the president to go ahead and speak to the country about where he's at.
Because the president has also teased an announcement tomorrow and something relating to Israel and Gaza and Hamas.
He's got a lot of moving parts, but from my information that I received, I think we're going to hear some good news tomorrow.
Okay, well, we'll be waiting out for that. We'll have it here on BBC News, of course. The other big threat to national security, apart from China, that we hear so much from this administration about, of course, is immigration, deportations, and it's been an extremely contentious issue for the last few months. The news today that the US is trying to deport migrants to Libya. Already, a judge has moved to restrict the ability of President Trump. But Bryce, is this the direction that America should be going to, sending people in this country to Libya, to El Salvador, as we've seen?
Well, I think they were trying to get those folks back to Libya that are here illegally, and they finally negotiated those terms to deliver those folks back to Libya. They looked at commercial airlines, try to get them back, but the airlines were a little reluctant to do that.
But again, it's the issue of due process. It's not the issue of the physical aircraft they're traveling on. It's that they're being denied their rights to due process.
Well, there is some due process, but they aren't U.S. citizens and they're here illegally, right? They're illegal. So if they have a deportation order that's already been given, then they're out. So, I mean, it's pretty clear line. The law is very specific. I didn't write the law. I don't think the congressman was in office when they wrote the law, but the law is pretty clear about who goes and who stays and how that works.
Yeah, I've been frustrated with both administrations, this one and the previous one, as it relates to border security and immigration. Most of Americans are pretty united on this, believe it or not, which is we want to see real border security. And so codifying some of the things that they're doing at the border is critically important. We need to have these additional Border Patrol officers funded fully. We need these judges. We need asylum reform. And we need a pathway for folks who want to come here and work that meets the needs of our economy. The challenge, and it's a real issue, is the defying of court orders, the operating outside of the Constitution, which requires due process. Having a no process removal policy is scary for a lot of people. That's why it's polling so badly with voters, because I think most voters see this and say, wait a minute, I would prefer everyone have a process so that we don't make any mistakes. These are folks from the Philippines and other places, and my understanding is that if this were to go forward, they'd be defying another court order.
Okay, we'll wait to see how that one plays out. Virginia State Senator Bryce Reeves and Ohio Congressman Greg Landsman, thank you very much for joining us here on BBC.